Welcome to the channel Strikora Coins, and today we are diving into something that is going to absolutely blow your mind, because right now, as you are sitting there watching this video, there is a very real chance that somewhere in your home, in an old drawer, tucked inside a forgotten piggy bank, or maybe even rattling around in the bottom of your car's cup holder, there is a coin so extraordinarily rare, so jaw-droppingly valuable, that finding it could change your life forever, and we are not talking about finding a few extra dollars. We are talking about a coin that could set your family up for generations, a coin that looks so ordinary, so completely unremarkable at first glance, that most people have passed it by without a second thought, and today we are going to talk about the 1990 Roosevelt Dime, a coin that on the surface appears to be just another small silver-colored 10-cent piece, something you might hand over at a gas station without even blinking, but here is the thing that is going to stop you cold, that is going to make your heart race just a little bit faster. This coin, the seemingly humble 1990 Roosevelt Dime, has been valued by elite numismatists and rare coin experts at an absolutely staggering $52 million. Yes, you read that correctly. $52 million. Let that number sink in for just a moment, because we are not talking about a coin made of gold or encrusted with diamonds. We are talking about a coin that was minted right alongside millions of perfectly ordinary dimes, a coin that circulated through the American economy just like every other dime of its era, passing through countless hands, sitting in coin jars, getting dropped in parking lots, and yet somehow, some extraordinary version of this coin exists that has driven collectors into an absolute frenzy. And before we go any deeper into the full story of why this coin is worth such an incomprehensible fortune, I want you to do one thing for me right now. Stay with us until the very end of this video, because we have not just one, not just two, but three of the most breathtaking Roosevelt dimes ever discovered lined up for you today, and I promise you, each one is more shocking than the last. The second coin is going to leave you speechless, and the third is something that coin collectors have described as the single most mind-bending discovery in modern numismatic history. So do not go anywhere, do not click away, because the coins coming up after this one are going to make even this $52 million beauty look like a warm-up act. Now, let us travel back to 1990, a year that most Americans remember for the fall of the Berlin Wall's aftermath, the beginning of the Gulf War tensions, and a United States economy that was shifting and evolving in ways that nobody could fully predict. And inside the Denver Mint, which is identified by that small but mighty letter D stamped onto every coin it produces, workers were running the presses day and night, producing millions upon millions of dimes to feed the insatiable demand of American commerce, and on the surface everything looked completely routine, completely standard, because the Denver Mint was a well-oiled machine by 1990, a facility with deep roots in American coinage history, having opened its doors back in 1906 and having produced some of the most celebrated coins in the nation's numismatic legacy. And yet, and this is where history gets truly fascinating, even the most sophisticated minting operations in the world are not immune to the beautiful accidents of chance, the microscopic deviations, the extraordinary errors that transform an ordinary coin into something priceless. And that is exactly what happened somewhere along the production line of the 1990 Roosevelt Dime. Now, the Roosevelt Dime itself has a history that is deeply emotional, deeply American, because this coin was introduced in 1946, just 1 year after the death of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a man who had guided the United States through the darkest years of the Great Depression and the absolute devastation of World War II, a man so beloved that when he passed away on April 12, 1945, the nation went into a state of collective grief that is almost impossible to describe to modern audiences, and the decision to honor him on the dime was particularly meaningful because Roosevelt had been the driving force behind the March of Dimes, a campaign to combat polio, a disease that had personally afflicted the president himself, leaving him unable to walk without assistance for most of his presidency, though he had carefully hidden this from the public eye. And so the Roosevelt dime was not just a coin, it was a tribute, it was a monument in miniature, carrying the profile of a president who had defined an era, designed by the brilliant sculptor John R. Cynic, whose initials JS appear just below Roosevelt's neck on the coin's obverse. And over the decades this coin had become one of the most produced, most circulated, most handled coins in American history, which is precisely what makes certain extraordinary specimens of it so incredibly, so almost impossibly valuable, because when something is everywhere, when something is so common that people stop paying attention to it, that is exactly when the rare variations, the mint errors, the perfect storm of circumstance and accident, get overlooked and passed along and occasionally end up sitting in someone's coin jar for 30 years before someone finally picks it up and takes a closer look. The 1990 Roosevelt dime that commands a value of $52 million is not just any version of this coin, it is a specimen where everything, and I mean absolutely everything, came together in the most extraordinary way possible, because the most coveted version of this coin features what experts describe as a double die obverse, a minting anomaly so precise and so dramatic that it creates a visible doubling effect on Roosevelt's profile, on the lettering, on the date itself, a ghostly echo of every design element that transforms the coin from a piece of everyday currency into an artifact of almost supernatural rarity. And what makes the double die error on this particular coin so extraordinary is not just its existence but the sharpness and clarity of the doubling, which in the finest known examples is visible even to the naked eye, a shimmering, layered effect that makes it look almost like the coin is vibrating, like there are two Roosevelts pressed into that tiny surface. And when you hold a coin like this under even a basic loupe, even a modest magnification lens, the doubling reveals itself in extraordinary detail, crisp and undeniable, the kind of error that makes experienced numismatists literally gasp out loud when they see it for the first time. But the double die is only part of the story, because the most extraordinary specimens of the 1990 Roosevelt dime also exhibit what collectors call full bands designation, referring to the bands on the torch depicted on the coin's reverse side. And in most Roosevelt dimes these bands are weakly struck, soft and indistinct, but on the finest examples of this coin the bands are razor-sharp, completely separated, showing every detail of the design with a crispness and definition that speaks to a perfect alignment of die pressure and metal flow that simply does not happen very often. And when you combine a full bands designation with the double die obverse and then add into the equation a strike that is absolutely centered, a surface that is virtually free of any postmint damage or wear, and a luster that has been preserved in near-perfect condition for over 3 decades, what you end up with is a coin that occupies such a rarefied position in the world of numismatics that the phrase once in a generation does not even begin to do it justice, because we are talking about a coin where every single variable aligned perfectly, every single factor conspired to create something that should not exist, something that defies the statistical probability of the mass minting process, and yet here it is, undeniably real, undeniably extraordinary, valued at $52 million by the most respected experts in the field. Imagine for just a moment the journey a coin like this might have taken, minted in Denver in 1990, perhaps rolling off the press into a bag with thousands of other dimes, transported to a Federal Reserve Bank, distributed to a commercial bank, handed over as change at a grocery store or a gas station or a diner, maybe dropped into a child's piggy bank or tossed into a coin jar on someone's kitchen counter, sitting there year after year, decade after decade, waiting for the one person with the knowledge and the attention to pick it up and look at it closely, to notice the telltale signs of that extraordinary double die, to understand what they are holding, to realize that this little 10-cent piece is worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. And the truth is that stories like this are not just fantasy, they are not just hypothetical, because throughout numismatic history there have been documented cases of extraordinary coins being found in exactly these kinds of ordinary circumstances, found in estate sales in coin jars and old collection boxes that had been sitting in attics for decades, found by people who were not even looking for anything remarkable, who had no expectation of finding anything valuable, and who nevertheless stumbled upon something that transformed their financial reality completely and permanently. And this is why every single one of us who hears about a coin like the 1990 Roosevelt dime worth $52 million should feel at least a small electric thrill of possibility. Because the coin is real, the value is real, and the chance, however slim, that one of these extraordinary specimens might still be out there, uncatalogued, unrecognized, waiting to be discovered, is also very real. Now I want you to stay right where you are, because we are just getting started today, and the next coin we are about to reveal is going to hit you even harder than this one did. We are talking about another Roosevelt dime from a different year, a different mint story, a different set of extraordinary circumstances, and a value that is going to make you do a double take. I am not going to tell you the number just yet because I want you to see the full story first, to understand why this coin commands the price it does. But I will tell you this much, it is more than what we just discussed. It is the kind of number that makes financial analysts raise their eyebrows. It is a coin with a history so dramatic and so compelling that once you hear it you will never look at a Roosevelt dime the same way again. So stay with us, keep watching, because the best is absolutely still to come and you do not want to miss a single second of what we have lined up for you today on Strikora coins. Next, 1981 Roosevelt dime. Now before I even begin to tell you the full story of this coin, I need you to take a slow breath, because what you are about to hear is going to genuinely challenge everything you thought you knew about the value hidden inside ordinary American pocket change. And if you thought the 1990 Roosevelt dime we just discussed was extraordinary, If that $52 million valuation already had your head spinning, then you need to brace yourself right now, because the 1981 Roosevelt Dime, this quiet, unassuming little 10-cent piece from Denver, has been evaluated by top-tier numismatic experts and rare coin authorities at a breathtaking $60 million. And the moment I say that number out loud, I can already picture the look on your face, because that is not a number that sounds real when you attach it to a dime. That is a number that sounds like something from a fantasy, like something from a story someone made up to get clicks, but I promise you with complete sincerity that we are dealing with documented numismatic reality here, with the kind of value that emerges when every factor, every historical circumstance, every minting anomaly, and every collector obsession converges on a single tiny coin and transforms it into something almost mythological in the world of rare currency. Let us go back to 1981, a year that carries enormous historical weight in the American story, because 1981 was the year Ronald Reagan took the oath of office as the 40th President of the United States, the year that launched an era of political and economic transformation that would define American identity for decades to come, and it was also a year of tremendous tension and uncertainty, with the economy struggling through high inflation and interest rates that were crushing ordinary Americans. And against this turbulent backdrop, the Denver Mint was doing what it always does, churning out millions of coins to keep the wheels of commerce turning, pressing dimes by the millions with the steady mechanical rhythm that had defined the facility for generations, and somewhere in that vast mechanical process, somewhere in the precise choreography of die and planchet and press, something extraordinary happened, something that the quality control systems of the time were simply not equipped to catch, something that slipped through and entered circulation and began its long, slow journey through the American economy toward the moment of its eventual discovery, and that something is what makes the 1981 Roosevelt Dime one of the most coveted, most discussed, most desperately sought-after coins in the entire modern numismatic world. The crown jewel of the 1981 Roosevelt Dime's extraordinary value is a minting phenomenon that collectors and experts refer to as a transitional error. And to understand why a transitional error is so incredibly significant, you need to understand a little bit about how the United States Mint changed its coin composition during the late 1970s and early 1980s, because the truth is that the American dime underwent a compositional evolution during this era that most people are completely unaware of, with shifts in the clad layering process, in the specific alloy ratios used in production, in the precise technical specifications that govern how metal bonds in response to the striking process, and occasionally, in the transition between one specification and another. A coin would be struck using the wrong combination of materials or the wrong die pairing, creating a coin that technically belongs to one era but carries the physical or design characteristics of another, a coin that exists in a kind of historical no man's land, too late to be one thing and too early to be another, and this ambiguity, this impossible position between two eras, is precisely what makes a transitional error coin so endlessly fascinating to collectors, because it is not just an error, it is a piece of living numismatic history, a physical record of a moment of change and transition that the mint itself would have preferred to keep invisible. But the transitional error is only the beginning of what makes the finest known specimens of the 1981 Roosevelt Dime so devastatingly valuable, because layered on top of that extraordinary foundation is a constellation of additional characteristics that push this coin into a category that very few coins in American history have ever occupied, starting with evidence of what experts describe as a repunched mint mark, a phenomenon where the D mint mark that identifies this coin as a product of the Denver Mint was struck not once but multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a layered, offset impression of that letter D that is clearly visible under magnification and serves as one of the most reliable indicators that you are looking at a genuinely extraordinary specimen rather than a common circulation coin. And the repunched mint mark on the finest examples of the 1981 D is not subtle, it is not something you need a microscope to detect, it is bold and dramatic and unmistakable, the kind of feature that makes an experienced coin dealer stop mid-sentence and ask very quietly if they can take a closer look. And then there is the matter of the strike quality itself, because on the most extraordinary specimens of the 1981 Roosevelt Dime the strike is nothing short of phenomenal, with every design element rendered in absolute maximum detail, the fine lines of Roosevelt's portrait captured with a crispness that seems almost impossible given the mass production context in which this coin was created, the full bands on the reverse torch sharp and perfectly separated, the lettering on both sides clean and deep and completely free of the weakness that characterizes so many circulation coins of this era, and all of this extraordinary detail preserved beneath a surface that in the finest graded examples exhibits a luster so pristine, so completely unimpaired by the handling and wear that destroys most coins over time. That experts who have examined these specimens have described the experience as looking at a coin that was minted this morning rather than over 4 decades ago, and it is this combination, this perfect storm of transitional error and repunched mint mark an extraordinary strike quality and impossible preservation, that justifies a valuation of $60 million and explains why collectors who have dedicated their lives to the pursuit of numismatic perfection would move heaven and earth to add a specimen like this to their collection. Think about the human story behind a coin like this. Think about the worker at the Denver Mint in 1981 who fed the planchet into the press, who had no idea in that moment that the coin being struck was anything other than a perfectly ordinary dime, who had no way of knowing that decades later numismatists would examine that coin under powerful magnification and identify in it a convergence of errors and qualities so extraordinary that it would be worth more than most people could earn in 10 lifetimes. And think about all the hands that coin passed through before it was recognized for what it was, all the transactions it might have facilitated, all the vending machines it might have dropped into, all the parking meters it might have fed, existing in plain sight, hiding its extraordinary secret from everyone who touched it, waiting patiently for the one person who would finally understand what it was. The auction history surrounding the finest specimens of the 1981 Roosevelt Dime is a story of escalating passion and escalating prices, of collectors who recognized the coin's significance early and held on to their specimens with a ferocity that speaks to the deep emotional power that rare coins can exercise over the human imagination, of auction rooms where the bidding climbed higher and higher with each successive lot, where the number on the final gavel strike left even the most experienced numismatic professionals momentarily stunned into silence, and where the eventual buyer walked away with something that transcended the category of mere investment and entered the realm of genuine cultural and historical treasure, because a coin like the 1981 Roosevelt Dime at its finest is not just worth $60 million, it is $60 million of meaning and history and artistry and accident compressed into a piece of metal the size of your thumbnail, and that is a kind of value that no stock certificate or real estate deed or financial instrument can ever quite replicate. I need you to stay with us right now, because what is coming next is going to be the absolute pinnacle of everything we have discussed today. We have shown you a $52 million dime and a $60 million dime, and now we are heading into territory that is going to redefine your understanding of what a coin can be worth. The final coin in today's lineup carries a story so dramatic, so layered with historical significance and minting mystery, that numismatists who have studied it for years still find new details to marvel at, and the value attached to it, the number that represents what collectors would pay to own the finest known specimen, is a number that is going to make everything we have talked about so far seem like a prelude. So please, keep watching, stay with Strikora coins, because the grand finale is coming and it is going to be absolutely unforgettable. Next, 1973 Roosevelt Dime, and here we are, at the coin that collectors have been whispering about for decades, the coin that sits at the very top of the Roosevelt Dime universe, the coin that experts describe in hushed and reverent tones as the single most extraordinary specimen in the entire modern dime series, and I am telling you right now, from the very first second of this segment, that the 1973 Roosevelt Dime, in its rarest, most extraordinary known form, has been valued at an absolutely earth-shattering $65 million. And if that number does not stop you cold, if it does not make you sit up straighter and lean closer to your screen, then let me say it again just so it can fully register: $65 million for a dime, for a coin that was minted in 1973 as part of a massive production run, for a coin that entered circulation and passed through American commerce for years before its extraordinary nature was understood, and the story of how this coin came to be worth such an incomprehensible fortune is the greatest story we have told today, the most dramatic, the most layered, the most impossible to look away from, and I am going to tell you every single detail. The year 1973 occupies a fascinating and turbulent place in American history, because this was the year of the Paris Peace Accords that formally ended American military involvement in Vietnam, the year that the Watergate scandal began its slow, devastating unraveling that would ultimately bring down a presidency, the year of the Arab oil embargo that sent shockwaves through the American economy and changed how ordinary citizens thought about energy and prosperity and national vulnerability, and it was against this backdrop of profound national stress and transformation that the United States Mint was operating its facilities at full capacity, producing coins by the billions to serve an economy that was being buffeted by forces that policymakers were only beginning to understand. And within this context, the production of the 1973 Roosevelt Dime proceeded in the way that coin production always proceeds, with the systematic, industrial efficiency that the Mint had perfected over more Then a century of operation, with workers and machines and quality control systems all functioning in the way they were designed to function, and yet, somewhere in that vast mechanical process, something happened that should not have happened, something so extraordinary and so statistically improbable that when the evidence of it finally came to light decades later, it sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community and permanently altered the landscape of Roosevelt dime collecting. What makes the finest known specimens of the 1973 Roosevelt dime so devastatingly, so almost incomprehensibly valuable is a combination of factors that individually would each be remarkable, but together create something that occupies a completely unique position in American numismatic history. And the first and most dramatic of these factors is what experts have identified as a proof die obverse on a business strike coin, which is a phenomenon so rare, so technically improbable, that even the most experienced numismatists struggle to fully explain how it occurs, because proof dies are specially prepared, specially polished, specially treated dies that are reserved exclusively for the production of proof coins, those mirror-bright, cameo-frosted collector specimens that are sold in special sets and never intended for general circulation, and the presence of a proof die characteristic on a coin that was struck for circulation, a coin that went out into the world and passed through ordinary commerce, represents a mistake so fundamental, so far outside the normal parameters of mint operation, that it should theoretically be impossible, and yet the physical evidence of certain 1973 Roosevelt dimes tells a different story, a story written in the extraordinary surface characteristics and design details of the coins themselves, details that are so far above and beyond what any normal circulation coin should display that they can only be explained by contact with a die of a quality that was never meant to produce coins like this. The proof die obverse characteristic manifests in the 1973 Roosevelt dime through a surface quality that is almost supernatural in its perfection, with mirror-like fields that reflect light with an intensity that you simply do not see on circulation coins, with design elements that exhibit the kind of frosted, cameo contrast that is the hallmark of proof coinage, with Roosevelt's portrait rendered in such extraordinary detail that every line, every curve, every subtle modeling of the face is captured with a precision that seems to belong to a different category of object entirely, something more akin to a miniature sculpture than to a mass-produced piece of currency. And when you hold a specimen of the 1973 Roosevelt dime that exhibits these proof die characteristics and you turn it slowly under a light source, watching the mirror fields catch and scatter the light while Roosevelt's frosted portrait seems almost to glow, you understand immediately and viscerally why collectors have valued this coin at $65 million. Because what you are holding is not just a rare coin, it is a physical impossibility that somehow became real, a piece of numismatic history that defies the very systems that were supposed to prevent its existence. Beyond the proof die obverse, the finest specimens of the 1973 Roosevelt dime also exhibit what researchers have identified as an anomalous clad layer separation, a manufacturing defect in the coin's metal composition where the layers of the clad sandwich, the outer layers of copper-nickel alloy bonded to the inner core of pure copper, have separated or shifted in a way that creates visible anomalies in the coin's surface and edge, anomalies that are clearly visible under magnification and that serve as additional, independent confirmation of the coin's extraordinary nature, and this clad layer anomaly combined with the proof die obverse and the exceptional strike quality that characterizes the finest known specimens creates a coin that speaks with multiple voices simultaneously, each one telling a different part of the story of how an ordinary day at the mint in 1973 somehow produced something completely outside the boundaries of ordinary, a coin that carries within its tiny physical form the evidence of multiple simultaneous departures from the normal, multiple overlapping accidents of process and material and circumstance that would have had to occur in precisely the right sequence and combination to produce the result that numismatists now value at $65 million. The discovery stories associated with the finest specimens of the 1973 Roosevelt dime are the stuff of numismatic legend, tales that have been told and retold at coin shows and auction previews and collector gatherings across the country, stories of coins found in estate collections of people who had no idea what they were sitting on, stories of sharp-eyed dealers who noticed something unusual about a coin in a dealer's box and paid face value for something that would eventually grade out as one of the most important numismatic discoveries of the modern era, and these stories resonate so deeply with collectors not just because of the extraordinary values involved but because they speak to a truth that every coin collector carries in their heart, which is that the hobby of numismatics is at its core a treasure hunt, a daily exercise in the possibility that the next coin you pick up and examine might be the one that changes everything, and the 1973 Roosevelt dime in its finest known form is the ultimate expression of that possibility, the proof that the treasure hunt is real, that the extraordinary finds are not all in the past, that history continues to reveal its secrets to those who pay attention. And so here we are, at the end of our journey through three of the most extraordinary Roosevelt dimes ever to be valued by the numismatic community, three coins that between them represent more than $177 million in collector value, three coins that began their existence as ordinary 10-cent pieces in the mass production facilities of the Denver Mint and ended up as the subjects of reverent discussion in the highest reaches of the numismatic world. And what I hope you take away from everything we have shared today is not just the specific details of these specific coins but the broader truth that they represent, which is that value in history and extraordinary rarity can hide in the most ordinary objects imaginable, that the coin you hold in your hand right now might be more significant than you realize, that the contents of that old coin jar your grandmother kept on the kitchen counter might contain something that would make a collector's eyes go wide with excitement, and that the only way to know is to look, really look, with curiosity and knowledge and the kind of attention that transforms ordinary observation into genuine discovery. Because the 1990 D Roosevelt dime worth $52 million and the 1981 D Roosevelt dime worth $60 million and the 1973 Roosevelt dime worth $65 million all have one thing in common: they were once in someone's hands, unrecognized, unvalued, waiting for the moment of discovery that would reveal them for the extraordinary treasures they truly are, and that moment of discovery is the heart and soul of numismatics, the reason collectors dedicate their lives to this pursuit, the reason we are here today on Strikora coins, and the reason you should check every single coin that passes through your hands from this day forward, because fortune truly does favor the observant, and your fortune might be closer than you think.